This is lesson 1 in the basic skills unit for Workplace Math 10. So this lesson is on using a scientific calculator properly and also rounding our answers. So let's talk about place values first and how to read a number like this. When you're looking at a number like this, anything to the left of the decimal place is going to indicate the whole numbers. So the first number here is the hundredths. We have 100 hundreds. Then we have 2 tens. And we have 3 ones. So if I was going to read that whole number, it would be 123. After the decimal place indicates only parts of the whole. So going from left to right, we have larger parts all the way to smaller parts. So because we have a base 10 decimal system, it goes down by factors of 10. So the first number after the decimal indicates tenths, then hundredths. So if you were to split a whole into 100 parts, this says that we'd have 5. Okay, then thousandths, and then 10 thousandths, and so on. Okay, so often in the real world, we want to be able to round numbers. A good example is money, right? We always usually have 2 numbers after the decimal place for money, but sometimes when we do a calculation, the number comes out with more decimals. So it's important to know how to round properly. And there's a good little way to remember. You look at the number next to whatever you want to round it to, and if the number is 5 or more, you let it soar. If the number is 4 or less, you let it rest. That means you don't round up. So let's look at some examples here. Okay, so first we're going to round to the nearest whole number, or the nearest unit. So that means we want no decimal places. Okay, so here's an example. 123.4599. That's the same example we saw above. I'm just going to zoom in here so we can see this a little bit better. There we go. Okay. So in this case, we want to round to, I'm going to highlight, here. This is the number we want to round to. We want to round to the whole number, but we're going to look at the number next to it. And we see that there's a 4. We don't want to get distracted by the 599. We just want to look at the one number to the right. Now, if that number is 4 or less, we want to let it rest. So this number is closest to 123 whole units. We don't want to round it up. Next example, we have 712.5934. This number, though, has a 5 next to the 2. That means it's closer to 713, actually. So we want to round it up to 713. Okay, next let's round to the nearest tenth. So the nearest tenth, remember, tenth is the number right after the decimal place. That means we want to have one number after our decimal. And we want to look at the number next door. So in this first part, we have 123.45. The 4 is next to a 5. That means this is actually closer to the next highest number. So we want to round it up to 123.5. Here, though, in the next example, same thing. Our 5 is next to a 9. That means we want to round this number up. 712.59 is actually closer to 712.6 if I'm rounding to one decimal place. All right, let's do some more examples. Rounding to the nearest hundredth. So hundredth, remember, is the second number after the decimal to the right. So we want to have 2 decimal places, 2 numbers after the decimal place. And this would be common for like money, for example. Okay, we always have 2 numbers after the decimal place in money calculations. Okay, so again, we want to look at the number next door and see if we want to let it rest or let it soar. So the first example here, we have a 9 next to the 5. That means this is closest to 123.46. We want to bump that 5 up to a 6. Here, though, we have 9.3. 3 is lower than 5, so we want to let it rest. Okay. All right, and lastly, we're going to round to the nearest thousandth. That means we're going to have 3 decimal places. So we're looking here at the 1000th position and seeing if we need to bump it up or not. This next one here is a little bit tricky because if I look at the number to the right, it is a 9. That means it's higher than 5. So I want to bump this number up, but there's no way to bump up a 9 any higher, right? So what I need to do in that case is actually bump up both of these numbers. So see how there, if I read them together, it says 59. I'm going to bump that up to a 60. So in the case where you have a 9 that you need to bump up, you're going to have to go next door. So 123.460 or 460. That's because I had to bump up both of those numbers because there's nowhere to make 9 higher. Okay, let's look at the next one. We have 700 oh, I should have highlighted that differently. 593. And let this one rest because the 4 is actually less than 5. So this number is closest to 712.593. Okay. Okay. Let's look at using our calculator now. This is a good skill to know how to do. A lot of students just struggle simply because they don't know what buttons to press in what order. So we're going to practice doing that now. If you feel like you already know how to use your calculator, you could test it out. But if you, if you want to do it along with me, that's cool too. And it also is going to tell us how to round our answers as well. Okay, so first one, finding the pi button. So every calculator is different. For this calculator, for example, I'm going to see the pi button. I don't see it actually. Where is my pi button? Oh, there it is. So sometimes you'll have to press the shift button to find it. See mine here is in the blue, light blue. So pi, and then this little dot, sometimes we'll see that instead of a multiplication symbol, just especially if there's any other numbers or symbols. And then 7 squared. Most calculators have a little squared button. It looks like x to the power of 2, like this. If you don't have it, you can just type 7 times 7. That's what it means. And I'm going to press enter. And see how my calculator gave me a decimal here? That's because pi is a number with infinite number of decimals. So you're always going to get a decimal number that continues forever, actually, if you use it. But we're going to round it off. So I'm going to write the first part of my answer there. So my answer was 153.93804. I'm going to write this 153.93804. And I used a little squiggly because it's not exactly equal. And we're going to round this to the nearest whole number. That means no decimal places. So I'm looking at the 3 here and I see it's next to a 9. That means I'm going to round this up to 154. All right, let's do the next one. A fraction. So some calculators have fraction buttons, but another way to type in a fraction is just division. Look at the division symbol. It actually just looks like a fraction with a dot on the top and the bottom where the numbers usually are. So 5 divided by 9, you can just type that in using a bracket, 5 divided by 9. That's the same thing as 5 over 9 as a fraction. And then I'm going to type in everything else as exactly as I see it. So bracket 50 minus 78. This is actually a calculation to get a Fahrenheit temperature into Celsius. Or it's similar to one that would do that. Okay, so see here again, I have a decimal number, negative 15.5 repeating, it looks like. So it's 15.5555 on forever. And we want to round this to the nearest tenth. So I'm looking at the 5 here, and I see it's next to a 5. So I want to round that up. Negative 15.6. Okay, square root. That's another button we need to know where it is on our calculators. Oops. So for my calculator, mine is in blue here, so I need to press the shift button. So you need to look for where your square root button is. It should look like that. And we want to press enter. And that's going to give us a decimal number, 7.61577. And it says round to the nearest hundredth. That means I'm going to look at the 1 here, and I need to bump that up because it's next to a 5. Notice I'm using squigglies for my equal signs. That's because these are not actually equal. I've rounded them. So it's kind of good practice to do that. Okay, and last one's got a lot of stuff here. You might want to try typing this in if you want. It's actually a calculation to get the surface area of a cylinder. So 2 times pi times 5 squared plus, and you can just type this in. If you have a scientific calculator with a display, you should be able to just type this in exactly as you see it. Oops. I need to delete that. There we go. Okay, 502.6548. 502.6548. And this is nearest thousandth. So we're looking at the 8 here, and that does indicate we need to go up. 502.655. All right, that's the end of that lesson.